You're listening to the Vendor's Daughter podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Calderon, also known as the Vendor's Daughter. I started this podcast about 7 years into working at my family's business. At the time, and really ever since, I've been geeking out on two main topics: self-improvement and business growth and development. I firmly believe that the healthier we are, both mentally and physically, the better we show up for ourselves, our lives, and our businesses. So, on the show, we talk a lot about things like a positive mindset, why what you eat matters, why it's important to move your body, and how a gratitude practice can change your life. And because growing a business is my favorite topic ever, we also interview entrepreneurs from various fields so that they can share how they grew their business. Which means along the way, we'll also talk about things like email list, growing an Instagram, and knowing when it's time to hire your next employee. You guys, the only thing I might like to talk about more than business is coffee. I love coffee. So grab a fresh cup and listen in as we deep dive into all the things. So just
okay, but will I sound the same if I don't have lipstick on, for goodness sakes?
You will. I don't have it on either, so hopefully we both sound okay.
Good.
How was your weekend?
The conference was great. It was really awesome. It was really good. Yeah, it was really good.
Yeah. How did they do it? Like, was she live for it, or was it like pre-recorded stuff?
So she was live for all of it, but the additional speakers were it looked as if the additional speakers had all recorded their videos, which would make sense because then they can control that, because otherwise.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Actually, there still were a few glitches because I guess so many people logged on that they crashed the system a couple times, and so yeah, they had people from 65 countries. They never said how many people were actually there, but they kept talking about the 65 countries, so that was kind of fun.
What an awesome problem to have. I swear, like, everything she does, it just seems like she's unstoppable right now. Right. Like, she just...
It was cool. Like, well, and it's the whole thing of how I just think she's pretty honest about what she does, right? I really think that's a key part of it, I think it's there's so much there's so much pressure. I think, like, if you have any sort of platform, don't you feel like you have so much pressure to often be perfect, and of course you're not, and so
yeah, no, I think it's difficult to figure out how to like create content that people want to consume, but like also be like most days I'm like, my life is pretty boring. Like, I don't know like how to make this like look more exciting than it is. Like, my videos take place right here. I have a beige wall, for goodness sakes. I'm like, I don't know what to do. So, but I saw she came out with that.
Oh, it's official now? I thought they weren't. Well, cool. They're going to unveil it, I think, like on June 1st or something, I thought. Yeah.
Yeah. So I know you can't download it yet, but they did like little trailer on her Instagram, but it looked pretty good.
Yeah, she was saying how that was one of the pivots that they made because of how, it was really cool. It was so cool hearing her talk about how she was just, how when it all happened, how she pretty much spent the whole first week just so depressed, like when everything, and then how they just had to pivot everything because they're an event company and now there can't be events, and so I know.
Crazy.
It really is. It really is.
She pivoted so fast. I mean, she just put on this huge live conference. Like,
so it was really cool. So there was it's just like anything else. So much of the stuff you feel like you've heard before, but you hear it in a different way. And like one of the things that so resonated with me, oh my gosh, like I could feel it in my bones as I even just said that, is how is this whole thing about courage and about pivoting and moving forward. And you know what, Jen, I really feel that this is the thing. I think that could I say this more confusingly? I don't think so. But my point is, that I somehow always just got the impression that they're the people who are courageous, like Rachel, just keep going. Like, okay, so like they might deal with that fear, but they deal with it. It's done. They turn their back on it and they go forward. And what every speaker pretty much talked about is, oh, hell no, that's not it. that fear is with you every step of the way. It's just that you decide that the courage is taking action in spite of it, like in spite of it being there. And so that's the
Yeah.
part that I thought was so powerful to remember, because I thought that I was less than because I kept having fear through everything. And that's not it at all. That's not about this podcast, about doing this podcast. I shared that with you. And I was like, what the heck
Yeah,
is wrong? Like, why am I so afraid of this? But and I almost canceled it over the weekend. I started to think, oh, I don't think I'm feeling very good. I was like, BS, you feel fine. You feel fine.
I love the honesty of that statement. I love it so much. And I think that you're not giving yourself enough credit because from what I can see, like you seem crazy brave. Like you're out there like with your Instagram and stuff, the videos that you do, you show up all the time. You do stuff that like I've been too afraid to do and like you're jumping on this even though you don't want to. So like I think it's like really you're just not giving yourself enough credit. I think that you're showing up far braver and with more courage than you're giving
And the
yourself
message
credit
here
for.
is that
So
the same
I
is
mean,
true for you, right? And that I don't, when I
yeah.
think of how I see you showing up in places, I don't think about how, oh, it's that damn beige wall again. Can't that girl do anything else? Like, of course, I never think about that. I think about the adorable video that you showed, with your husband and your dog going through the apartment for the first, I mean, your house for the first time when you moved. Like,
Um,
but isn't it, it's, so, and I think that that's the message that, we have to bring to everybody, because everybody feels like this, right? Everybody feels like this.
yeah,
And they can't be
I think
encouraged enough.
so.
I mean, people just can't be encouraged enough.
It's so true. I think you messaged me why I didn't join
Mhm.
the live event, and I was like, oh man, I think I'll just wait and tell you in person because I love Rachel so much and like I'm so grateful for everything that her and Dave have done and like the encouragement they've given me. But I also have a really difficult time because I get really jealous sometimes, and so I'm just like I just feel like, well, gosh, girl, like I've gotten up every day and I'm doing all this stuff, and like I'm not seeing the needle move as much, and I keep having to remind myself that it's not a comparison and that like we're each doing our own race and we each have to show up in our own way. But sometimes it gets a little too difficult for me, and I was like, I just don't think I have a conference in me right now. So, but now I'm hearing you talk about it. I'm like, gosh dang it, Jenny, you should have gotten over
Okay, but
yourself
Jen, can
and
I tell you
shown
that
up.
that literally brings me to tears, because again, like, I deal with that same bull crap in my head too. Like, feeling like,
Yeah.
well, I see competitors. I can't even believe I used that word. I like, literally, I'm serious about this, crying. I see colleagues do
Oh,
things, and I know, I mean, I'm a God girl. I know there's enough out there for everybody. I know that there's, but I tell you, just like you, sometimes I just think, well, this just isn't fair. I've been working hard too. Like, I wish I had thought of that. Like, how come I didn't think of that? And I would love to say that every single time I'm like, oh, well, bless you, sweet child. I wish success for you, and bless you too. What a great idea. You go right ahead. And but I have to choose. Like, I have to choose to
yeah.
stop and to choose community over competition, because there is enough for everybody, right? And that was one of the main, that
There
was another one
is.
of the main main points that I think John Maxwell was talking about, or now I'm forgetting, I forget which speaker said it, but the whole point about how your story and the way you give it voice is different than anybody else. And so there are, and right, it's the same thing I would tell a client. I would say, it doesn't, I think of the time when I worked with 3 women's clothing stores in a block and a half of each other in downtown Chicago. And they all were
Wow.
mad that I was working with the other person. Like, it just kind of happened gradually but the thing is that I could see clearly how they were all very different. They for sure shared customers, but they were
Yeah.
very different. And so I always try and remind myself about that, about how, and actually how I was able to help them all increase their sales, Jennifer, is because Jennifer, it's like I'm your mom calling you by your full name, you know.
No, it's
But
okay.
I could, but it's because I allowed each one. I helped give a voice. I helped really help them hone in on what their own voice and messaging was, and how it was all so different. And so as they stood taller and stronger in who they really were, they just all did more business. Like, it was so beautiful.
That is beautiful. I love that you could like look into them too. I think it's so important sometimes to have the outside perspective because people can see like what you can't see in yourself. And so for you to be able to like pull that out of them and say, no, like you are competitors or colleagues or however you want to say it, but you each have this
Right.
individual thing to give. I think it gets really dangerous. And this is where I go for myself, which like helps pull me out of it sometimes is that like we do each have our own voice to bring, and even if it's a similar message you can still
Hmm.
reach certain people that like for me I'm like well maybe I can say something to a friend and Rachel Hollis
Hmm.
wouldn't be able to speak to them the way that I could kind of thing. So I just keep thinking well you have a voice, you were created for a reason and you need to show up for whatever that reason is and stop wishing that you had the same
Right.
reason as somebody
So true.
else.
So true.
So yeah, but I love the idea of being able to look at somebody else and see clearly what their strengths are and then
Right.
helping them stand up straighter because sometimes you just can't stand
That's a
up straight
beautiful
on
way
your
of
own.
putting it. You
So
can't. And honestly, that's the same thing that happened to me last week when I met with you. And I was really suffering from feeling, I personally, like an hour before you and I got on the phone, I was feeling that, oh my gosh, my
yeah.
messaging is so weak. It's so vague. Like, there's all, and you get on the phone and we start talking and you're like, oh my gosh. And your messaging is so clear, Cathy. And you're about all profit. You're about more profit and better sleep. And it's so beautiful. And I was like, oh, you know what? She's right. Dang it, that is pretty clear. Yeah, you're
It is pretty clear. I was on your website again this morning, just going over things, preparing, and again, I was struck by just it's right there. It's right there on the homepage. Like make more money or better profit and get better sleep. I'm like you could not be more clear than that. Like you know exactly
It's
what
so
you
funny
stand
though.
for. So
The other analogy that I like to use is that you can't see the picture when you're in the frame, right? So
whoa, I've never
how
heard
about it,
that.
right? Like, so I always visualize, like, actually how in a picture it's like you're holding the frame around your head and you can't really see it. You can't really see it. You can't really see it.
No.
And it's the reason why, pardon?
I said just oh my gosh, I'm like blown away by that. I'm like I never even
Well,
once
and
thought
so
about
the and
that.
so and the more clear, and so the way, then the practical action step of that is that that's why you always need to have these strong, powerful people around you. Either somebody, like, it's this
Yeah.
is the reason why I do what I do, because I tell this to prospects all the time, like, or future fans, I call them. And that, like, when they're talking to me about struggles they're having in their store, I always say, listen, it I can clearly see the steps you need to take in order to improve it. And it's not that you're not smart. It's not that you
Yeah.
can't do it. I said, but you can't see the picture when you're in the frame. And so I feel like it's literally why God put me on earth, is to be able to look and to be able to see that. And so the thing that I remember is how I'm guilty of the same thing about my own business. And so that's the reason why it's so important to make sure that you're surrounded with people that can speak truth into you, and, and be a hype squad when you need it, for sure, for sure.
You're
But
yeah.
that will also be honest with you. So that's what I appreciate about our crazy friendship, is exactly that,
Right?
exactly that.
I keep thinking all the time I wasn't actually supposed to be at Rides in Dallas. Um, through a crazy turn of events, I had gone to this business training in Michigan, sponsored through our industry earlier the previous year, and I wasn't. I was like given like a courtesy ticket last minute. Someone dropped out, and they're like, "Well, we need to fill a slot. You can come if you want to." I was like, oh, "Heck yeah, I'll come." So I met this girl, Joy, who lives in Austin. And when I moved to Austin, she's like, why don't we meet up for lunch? We can talk about business and share some ideas. And randomly, she's like, have you heard of Rachel Hollis? And I was like, have I heard of Rachel Hollis? Like, I'm obsessed with Rachel Hollis. Like, yes, I know Rachel Hollis. And it turns out her best friend is Rachel's event coordinator. So she's the one who does host the live events. And I started talking about how I wanted to go to Dallas, but it was sold out. And she's like, wait 1 second. And so she just texted her friend and like got me a backstage pass and was like, here you go. Yeah. So I was like, cool. I say backstage, I didn't get to like meet anybody, but I got to go. And then last minute, like as I was leaving the conference, her friend was like, hey, Jen, did you want to go to the after party? And I was like, yeah, I want to go to the after party. And so she just gave me the wristband. And then I met you and your daughter. And I was like, this is crazy. It's just like crazy. I just left that weekend feeling so loved and so taken. I also have my faith. And I just like the whole way home, I just like thank God for taking care of me and like helping me meet you and the experience I got from Rise. I really am. That's why I feel like I just feel gross sometimes because I'm like, I'm so grateful for Rachel, but then I also am like so jealous of Rachel. So I'm just like,
Right.
I just keep reminding myself that humans are allowed to have complex emotions. So
Absolutely. Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. One of the things that I was listening to Dave talk about was about how Dave Hollis talked about was how he when he decided the kind of person that he wanted to be going through this pandemic, going through the quarantine, and he said that he didn't want to fall back into old habits and
yeah,
into habits that he knew would numb the pain, would comfort him at the time, but wouldn't make him a stronger person for the next day.
yeah.
And so I was thinking about how that is just so hard to do in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And my point about it to you is that is that what he found what he really did was actively like journal and start to realize why he was triggered, and and what you're talking about being triggered by that, like there's like there's such power, Jenny, in recognizing that and knowing that and claiming it. And I'm so proud of you for just being willing to share it, because that happens to everybody. And
Yeah.
so then so then my challenge to you is to kind of and as to myself is to kind of think through it and to kind of think, so why is that, and what, and so do I really want to do a conference? Like, is that what I want from it? Because don't we so often then just race forward to the next thing, right?
Yeah. And like I just want to get away from the feeling. So I'm like, well, I'm just gonna work and try to outrun it, but you can't outrun
No,
it.
mm-mm,
So
mm-mm. No,
but
it'll just come up again.
I did hear the concept once that jealousy, because like I grew up in a Christian home, and so it's like, oh, jealousy was bad. Like you're not
Mhm.
supposed to be jealous, you're not supposed to covet all these things. But then I started getting into the podcast and the world of self help, and I don't remember who said it, but someone said to look at jealousy as an arrow, as like pointing you in a direction that you want to go. So like if you feel jealous about something, is it because like that's a direction that you're supposed to go? So try to use it as a guiding light instead of something like try to like work through it and don't be like negative about it, but try to use it as a positive direction. So
I love
I try
that.
that sometimes, but I'm like, yeah, this is my first time doing like a video with the podcast as well. So I'm like, I've avoided it because I can like hide behind the microphone, you can't really like hide with this screen. So I laugh all the time. Like, well, if you really want to do a conference, you're gonna have to get way more comfortable in front of people than you currently are. So
Well, I'm proud of you for doing it. I'm proud of you for doing it.
thank you. I'm proud of you for doing it. Should we,
Right.
should we talk about Retail Mavens? Should we?
Sure.
Did,
Yeah, sure. Well, actually, and it's a beautiful segue because I realized that one of the things about what our messaging is. So, like as I was prepping for this, I was thinking about that, and I think the other thing that people don't like to talk about, or think about, or deal with is money and numbers,
yes.
and how much people love to just stick their head in the sand about that. And
Mhm.
in fact, when I give speeches, I often use the analogy and even have like a great image of like of an ostrich that has its head in the sand, and its butt up in the air, because that's what tends to happen with all of us, is that that's not a reason why people go into business, is because they love Excel sheets, or that they love, that's not on the list. But but the thing is that passion doesn't pay the bills,
Oh,
and
that's
that
good.
I mean, it can for a little bit, but it can't sustain it forever. Not if you really want to take it.
No.
So, and so that's the part that I really love to do. Also, is to look at numbers and hear the story that the numbers are telling me, because there's always a story in it, and people tend to take the numbers and judge themselves about it. And so
Yeah.
I'm always telling people, you are not your numbers. You are not your numbers. You are not your numbers. That your numbers are just a reflection of something on a certain day. That's all that it is. That's all it is. It's just a reflection of like a certain day. They're black and white. That you have to remove yourself from the emotion of it, and then let's just tackle it. If you want to change it, let's just change it. And if you don't want to change it, that's fine too, because not everybody is ready to. But
Yeah. For the people, because I feel like numbers are emotional because you look at it and like I feel like that's why you want to avoid it. One, they can be complicated. I'm not a numbers girl,
mm-hmm,
but then two, it's like you do look at it and you judge yourself for like not seeing something you should have seen before, or like for knowing that you should have dealt with it but not wanting to deal with it. So
mm-hmm,
when people are in that space, how do you help them like get past that to actually tackle the numbers, or how do you like help them remove the emotion from it? Because I feel like if you could remove the emotion, it would be far easier because you wouldn't be like beating yourself up while you were trying to solve problems. So
so true, so true. Well,
yeah.
and you know what's so interesting about that, Jenny, is that I always tell the story about how I was we changed accountants a couple of years ago, and so and before that we'd had the same accountant for like, I don't know, 15 years or something. And so we changed accountants, and so of course I had to bring my numbers to them, my financials, so I bring all my financials, I bring it all down, and yeah, I mean, this is what I do for a living. Like, I'm very comfy in QuickBooks. I'm a total dork about it. I love all that stuff. So I'm very comfy with it. So I'm bringing all my numbers, showing all the numbers with them. Then the minute he started asking questions, so then he's looking, he's like, so this number right here, like my heart started to pound. And I felt like, he's like, so tell me, what goes into this number? Oh, okay. So you see, so what happened was that, and I launched into this big, huge story about this one number. And he's like, and so he was so kind and like, and just listened to the whole story. He's like, okay, actually, my question about it was more just, is this a recurring expense, or,
Oh,
you know, and I just started laughing because I said to him, this is what clients do to me. And I'm you, like, you know what I mean? Like, I just did what all my clients do. And I've been dealing with these numbers like for so long. And it was hilarious to me, even though I teach this all the time and I love numbers, how instantly it became emotional for me too.
you were immediately defending it, and he was like, "No, I just needed to know, was it like A or B?"
Yes, exactly, exactly. And that's totally what I let people do too. I let people go down this whole rabbit trail, and I'm just watching them on Zoom, taking a sip of my water, listening to them because I know they got to get it all out. And then at the end, just saying, yeah, thanks very much. Okay, so right, is this A or B? Because, this is how I'm going to teach you about how. So it was really, I always share the story of how, listen, I even get anxious about it. Like, I have to remind myself that this is a work in progress and that you don't have to get emotional. And I think the thing is, it goes back to what we were saying about being in the picture, and how when you're, excuse me, in the frame, or when you're in the picture, or when you're in the frame, you can't see the picture. and
Yeah.
and so you tend to then, I think, respond emotionally. Whereas what I can do, so this is what I tell people, is that what I do is I'm looking at the whole picture for you. So I can see where your numbers are good compared to everybody else, where there's opportunities for improvement. I don't ever say that anything's bad, because frankly, it doesn't even matter. Even like if you made a quote unquote bad decision, like I've had credit card debt, which is horrible, right? I mean, like, that's what, but I really have worked hard about how it was a decision I made at the time with the light that I had. I tried to make it as I tried to make as good of a decision as I can. And I've just learned, right? We keep moving forward and we keep improving. And that's the only way you can look at any of your numbers. And that's literally how we give people better sleep then, Jenny, is
Oh
because
God.
you can wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and be going to the bathroom and start freaking out like, oh my gosh, my sales are so down, my store is closed. What am I going to do? But the thing is that courage is having fear but taking action in spite of it, and that's the thing, right? That's the thing, is that what I do is give people action steps that they can take. And so then at 2 o'clock in the morning when they wake up, they don't know exactly what action step they can take the next morning, but the next morning when we sit down and look at it together, we'll lay it out. Like, that's exactly what we'll do.
Wow, I love that. I love how you can take something as scary as numbers and be like, no, we're going to make it less scary. We're going to take away the emotion. And because of that, you're going to be able to get sleep. And you might not, you might wake up at 2 a.m. with heart palpitations, but you can know that you can go back to sleep because in the morning you have somebody to tackle it with. Like, you don't have to do it by yourself.
Right, right,
Frank, you
right.
can do almost anything if you know that there's somebody who's going to come alongside you and like show up for you. It's
Mhm.
easier to show up for yourself when you know that someone else is going to show up too.
Exactly. Right, right. It's the whole thing about setting yourself up for success. I always talk about how I want you to set yourself up for success so that you trip over it. And so, like, I really love to work out, and and like, it is also like a mental health thing for me. Like, I have to work out, and it's fabulous for me. And so like, I on work days when I know I'm going to work out, so what I will do is that I know if I'm waking up first thing in the morning, I will literally go to sleep wearing my workout clothes so that when the alarm goes off in the morning, I'm like, all right, I have no reason why I can't just get up and work out. I mean, I'm already all dressed. I'm already
That
all
is
dressed. I might as well
so
do it.
smart.
It really helps. It really
I'm
helps.
gonna start doing that because what I'll do, I get up earlier than my husband, and like I know that if I work out in the morning, I have a better chance of actually getting it done, and I feel better the rest of the day.
Hmm, hmm.
But I don't particularly, and I like the after effects. I don't like the actual working out part.
Yeah.
And so what I'll do, I'm like, well, I'm just gonna go like make a cup of coffee, and I make my cup of coffee, and then I'm like, well, I couldn't possibly go back in the room and wake him up. Like, I would be a bad wife to go like get my clothes out of there. And so then it like I did that this morning, to be honest. And so I'm just like, but like, no, if I had just slept in the clothes, I couldn't out trick myself. I'd be like, no, you literally have no excuses. You
Right.
have to do this.
Right. Right. My husband will always say it's not his favorite thing. It's not his favorite. It's not his favorite habit of mine, but it works, right? So.
It totally does. And I was like, I do. I have a lot of anxiety naturally, and so the days where I drink a lot of coffee, so it's bad. I drink a lot of coffee paired with my natural anxiety. But on days where I work out, I do feel better. It's just hard sometimes to prioritize it because I'd rather just jump into the work, even though I know logically that I do better work when I've had my workout. So
Hmm,
I
hmm.
don't know.
For sure, for sure. Yes, you're not alone in that. You're not alone in that.
Thank you. I was like, I'm gonna take your trick. I'm gonna take your trick of just dressing for it. But well, before you started Retail Mavens, you actually had your own retail store. So
Yeah.
I want to make sure we tell listeners about like your origin story and how you got started with Duck Duck Goose. Is that
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, that was the name of it, right? Yeah. Um, yeah. So um, I was actually on my way to medical school, believe it or not, and was in a Lamaze class and met this guy who owned a kids store, and then I had applied to medical school and I was waiting to hear, and so then I happened to run into the guy. Like, so then I had my daughter, and he had his son, and anyway, so I managed him on the street, and he's like, he said, so what are you doing? And I said, and we started talking, and he said, would you ever think of coming to work with me, where I really need people? And I don't know, I've always worked, right, but I somehow my whole life had never worked in retail ever before. Like, I'd done all the other kind of jobs you typically do, but somehow I'd never done retail. And so I said, yeah, sure. So if I could bring my daughter, sweet, let me bring my daughter. So I worked there, and I just loved solving people's problems and finding solutions for what they were looking for and taking care of them. And then I started getting all these great ideas. And ultimately the guy's like, the guy says, listen, he says, if you have so many great ideas, maybe you should just open up your own store. It was,
You
it was,
didn't like the feedback on you.
right. It was so funny. It was so funny. So I was like, okay, all right. And so then what had happened is that my grandmother or my aunt had just passed away and left us some money. And so then my sister had also just graduated from college, and so she was trying to decide what to do. And I was still waitlisted from medical school. I hadn't heard, and so I decided that. So we decided to just sort of take steps and look into it, and we decided to go ahead and open our own store. And so we did, and it was. Hugely successful at first. And so we were sure that we were retail geniuses, obviously, and that if one store was good, that two stores would be better. So almost immediately we opened up a second store.
Wow.
And that is where the story really begins, because what happened was that the economy changed, and so turns out that we didn't really have any tools to fight a crisis, to fight a negative situation, and everything that we had done before stopped working, and sales were plummeting. And so so really the whole point of all it, so we were almost bankrupt, and I asked my godfather for money, and because he's your godfather. He's like, I had to be his favorite. He wasn't going to turn me down, right? And so I remember bringing all these numbers, because I always loved all the numbers part of it. Like, that was my part of what we did. And so sitting down with him at over dinner and laying all this stuff out, talking about our plans, and at the end of the dinner, it's one of those moments in life that you can remember so clearly. He says, Kathy, he says, I totally believe in you. I really do. But I just don't think you really know your numbers. What? No. I said, you just obviously just don't understand retail, because I love I know numbers, and I love numbers. And he's like, oh, for sure, I don't know retail. Like, I know electrical contracting, and I've been very successful there. But he said, I think the real reason why I've been successful is because I do know my numbers. And at the end of the day, there's money that comes in, and there's money that goes out, and there has to be enough afterwards in your hand, or none of it makes sense. And and he says, I just don't see that. And so I just, and so it's one of those moments where I just drove home crying, and I was so angry. And but really it turned everything around for me, because it's what then forced me to, I for sure went through the whole grieving about how, well, maybe I should give this whole thing up, but then I was just too mad about it. And so really just dug in and got help, and hired a consultant, and did a whole bunch of research, and worked really hard, and was able to turn everything around. And it, like, right, it was not always easy, but we ended up opening up, turning all the stuff around. We ended up opening another store, and then I stopped working weekends. I had 4 kids and didn't work weekends, and 3 stores, and it was just fabulous. So we'd go to trade shows, and I just discovered that I was really super passionate about that not everybody else was enjoying retail as much as I was. And so I just got super passionate about sharing that with people. And so that's why I sold the stores then to my sister, because that was becoming much more fulfilling to me than actually doing the retail itself. And so, yeah. So that's
I
that.
love it. I'm listening to your story, and I think you were so much braver than you give yourself credit for. You were on a path to med school, and you left. There's like, I'm going to open up a retail store. Like, that's a pretty big shift.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, yeah. That's why I love to tell it, because it's like, it doesn't make any sense. Wait, what?
like what? Yeah. Like, was your family kind of like, what? Or were they just like, yeah, do it?
Yeah,
How did they respond?
it was really interesting, because my dad was a doctor, and he was very much, actually, what was fascinating is that he really at the time recognized how much medicine was going to change, and how much more the impact that the insurance industry was going to have on it. And so he was like, I don't think it's a for sure deal, he said. And so he said, you should do what you feel really passionate about. And so
Gosh, I love that.
yeah, it was really great. It was really great how he encouraged me. So so it really, and it was fun to I mean, you're I really got a lot of support, and it was also very satisfying doing it on our own, like, because we didn't get money from him. Like, we got this little inheritance from my aunt, our great aunt, and then we went to the bank, and they gave us the money, and so the bank gave us the money, so we really did do it all on our own. It wasn't like we he didn't bail us out. Like we did it all on our own. So yeah, so
So cool.
it was really cool. It was really cool.
And then you said about 15 years you guys were doing retail. You were
Yes.
at that place,
Hmm.
and then
Hmm.
so 15 years into it, you decided that you were gonna make another change. And
Yeah,
so
right. So
you're
literally
like,
in the last century, I like to tell the kid, I like to say it's literally in the last century, March of 1999 is when I sold the store and started Retail Mavens. And so
crazy.
we turned 21 last month, which means that we're legal. And so we can finally drink, which is fabulous. That's
That
great.
is so cute. That's cool. Happy 21st birthday.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
It's a
Thank
big deal. It's a really big deal. So was that scary for you to jump again, or was it just you were
you.
excited about it?
No, it was really super scary because like anything, like anything, it's so funny, isn't it? Like how, so as entrepreneurs, so we're wired to love growth, right? I mean, like we're wired to always want to grow, and to always achieve more. And that requires change.
Yeah.
Growth requires change. And yet, along with, I know quite a few other people, I would suspect, hate change.
Well,
Oh,
my
right.
conundrum to my husband, because he's like, you always want to start something new, but you don't want anything to change. It's like, well, I don't. Again, complex people. I'm just like, I
Exactly.
don't know.
Exactly. Right. So we get in this place of comfort. And so,
Mhm.
yeah, so for sure it was really hard. It was really hard even kind of deciding to open the stores originally, frankly. Yeah, because I had been on this other path for a very long time.
Yeah.
But yeah, but that's where I'm so grateful for my faith, because I really believe God helps, gives you some signs along the way. And so yeah, so it was so yeah, it was powerful, but it was scary, and I have to continually remind myself when I am dealing when I'm in an uncomfortable place, of dealing with change, that it's what
Yeah.
I really want, that I really do want that.
I yeah, you have to remind yourself sometimes. I
Totally.
remind myself sometimes with there's a I have another I launch a new podcast every Monday, so the episode that comes out today is about when I started the podcast. But I
Mm,
think it's important to remember, like when you want to make a change, if you've like done that in the past, it's
mhm,
like, oh well, I did it before, I can do it again. Like you start building reps,
mhm,
so you get a little bit stronger at it, a little bit
mhm.
faster at it. Sometimes
Right.
it doesn't make it less scary, but it that you do start to build like this. um I don't know, it's like you become a little bit of your own cheer squad. You're like, no, I got this, I did it, I can do it
Yeah,
again, like.
for sure.
But
For sure. It's John Maxwell talks about how courage is meant to be used up, not stored up. And I
ooh,
know, right? And that's exactly what you're
oh,
doing.
that's good.
And I
That's
think that you can remind yourself of other scary things you've done, and you're like, well, if I did all that, I can for sure do this, right? I can for sure
yeah,
get through this. And I think that's a key uh thing, that I think that one of the problems that happens with all of us is that we end up just continuing to move forward so fast that we don't take time to intentionally look at what triggers us, look at how we
yeah,
respond to that trigger, and we don't often make a choice, we just react, right?
yes,
And uh and the choice comes from forcing yourself to think about all the things you've done that you've succeeded at. One of my clients does that. I just love this. So we talk in our world, we talk all the time about hashtag pat your own back. And I
oh,
believe it's so powerful to celebrate your own achievements, and we tend to move so fast that we miss them, right? We
you
forget what they
do.
are. So I have a client who came up with this genius idea that I've totally swiped, is that she every month, well, she had in Evernote, she has a little book, and one of those little books in Evernote
Yeah,
about that's just she just calls celebrations and wins. And so at the end of every month, she writes down what her celebrations and wins were. And
oh, I
so,
love that.
because we forget what we've already done that was hard,
You
because we
do.
move on to the next thing.
You do. You just like move right past it.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
you're like, yeah, it's like you struggled and then you just blew right past the thing. I've been working hard this year to celebrate milestones. So to like take a break and be like, no, like you did do this. So just take a minute or two or like an hour and just like celebrate the fact that you spent a very long time trying to do something and you did it. So, but it is hard because I just want to move on to the next thing. I'm like, oh yeah. Let's just go.
Well, and so what
like
has worked for you, Jenny, to really make you stop? Like, how do you make yourself stop?
yeah, honestly, I think just the only thing I can really think of that's different is my husband is really big on kind of like slowing down and just enjoying life a little bit more.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so because I value that relationship so much, and I'm like, okay, well, like I can't just go all the time because we're not in this business right now together. And so I'm like, if I were just to go all the time, then I'm not prioritizing
Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
And so I think in order for me to like slow down my brain enough so that I can just like go relax and enjoy time with him, I do have to have kind of like this pause in the day or the week where I can just release everything and then I can go show up for what is arguably the most important part of my life, but that I tend to push
For sure.
away. So,
Yeah, for sure.
so I think that's been the only thing that's really caused me to sit still long enough is that. So
Wow.
yeah,
Isn't it so interesting? Because so again, what I hear when you say that is it's that you're recognizing the power of you're recognizing how you can't see you can't see the picture when you're in the frame,
yeah,
and so you're recognizing that your husband can see it more clearly, and then you're being intentional about that relationship, and so that's almost what's causing it. I love that. It's your
it's so
intentionality about
good.
the relationship is really causing you to celebrate more.
Yeah, it also because he can so clearly see out into the frame. Sometimes I get super frustrated because I'm like, you don't know what you're talking about. You know, you don't know what it's like to be in the frame. So I'm just like, he puts up with a lot from this girl. So he's he's a keeper.
Right, right, for
Good.
sure. That's so great. That's so great. Well,
Yeah.
I think it's so interesting too about the intentionality about numbers is that the other thing that happens is that you were talking before about how emotional they are. And isn't it so true too that even when we can remind ourselves that, hey, look, I did deal with my numbers last week. I looked at my profit and loss, like I looked at what I was supposed to look at. But then you go to do it the next week and it's like you don't even remember that you had done it and that you had that courage because the emotion comes up just right
Yes.
away, just like right away. And it's such a process to work through. And honestly, you have to just do it time and time again because it's like creating a new habit. It's like creating a
It
new habit.
is.
It takes a
It
long,
really
takes a
is.
long time to break.
I am with Retail Mavens. When someone joins the program, like how long is the program, or like how long do you stay with them? Is it like indefinite, like a membership like renews every year, every month, or is it just like this is a 6 month course and at the end of it everything's hunky dory? How does that how does that
Well,
work?
so what it is it's that it is we have a bunch of different we created a bunch that's a very professional term, a bunch of different tools. We have different online tools that kind of help people get started in certain areas that they need help with. Like we have a tool about how to have a killer clearance sale because that's something that people always need, and then how to have a six-figure holiday blueprint, and and how to really handle the and because I'm just a geek about the science about of retail and the science of consumer psychology. And so honestly, so the thing I love so much about the six-figure holiday blueprint is that it looks at how the customer that shops like the week before Thanksgiving has different needs and wants than the customer that shops the week before Christmas, who is of course then very different than the customer who shops like after Christmas, right? Which
Yeah,
that part's more obvious, but even the difference between the week before Thanksgiving and like the beginning of December and then the week before Christmas, like it's so interesting, like how your marketing should be different, how what their average sale is different, how many items that they'll put. It's all so fascinating. And so what I love to do is take all that really kind of complex stuff and break it up into easy action steps, and so that you know exactly what marketing you should be doing for that week based on the science of the customer. You know exactly how you should be motivating your team, and so all of that, so there's marketing, there's the motivation, and there's also the merchandising. Like, so how should things be merchandised on your front counter? Because how they should be merchandised before Thanksgiving is very different than how they should be merchandised later. And often people don't think about that kind of stuff, you know? And
Yeah.
so the long answer to your question is that actually all the products like that I developed, it's
Yeah.
because of how it came from what clients needed. Because how I just got tired of repeating the same thing to people over and
Yes.
over again. So I actually created all these for my clients, and now we also sell them separately, and then it kind of gives people kind of a taster into what we do,
Smart.
and so we work with clients one on one to, and the reality is that, you know, is that there's oh gosh, the reality is that, you know, how business keeps changing. I mean, now is such a perfect case in point, right? So I mean, honestly, I don't usually tell people this because I feel like it sometimes freaks them out, but honestly, we usually just stay with people kind of forever because we keep showing how we pay for ourselves every single month
Right. Well,
through
I
the
saw on your website it was something like a 22% increase in sales and like a something reduction in SKUs. And I was like, that's crazy. I was like, for our business, it's really important to, maybe for all businesses, but to limit the SKUs. And so, but it can be
Mhm.
difficult to bring that down. So I was
Right.
really impressed by that number. And then also just, I actually am glad that you said that you stick with him, because I feel like once you have a coach or someone who kind of plays that role for you, like it's important to maintain that relationship, because I
Mhm.
think what happens is that you get to kind of a healthier place. You're like, oh, I can do this on my own kind of thing. And then you step away from it. And then all of a sudden you start like falling back into the old patterns,
Right.
or
Right.
you miss something or whatever. And
Mhm.
then slowly but surely you just kind of like recede back to
Right.
where you were. And you're like, oh, well, I need to get a coach again, but then you have all of that like uphill climb to do again. And so I
Mhm.
really like the notion of like just staying consistent with somebody and just like just sticking the course out. So I think it makes sense. Like,
Well, and what's been interesting is how I've approached, how the approach that I've had, and all the time. Like, it started out that I was like full on called myself a consultant and a speaker, and like that was what I did with people. But the reality um, is that, well, I mean, I'm still a speaker and I speak everywhere, and we do consult, but honestly, it's coaching is really what it is,
yeah,
because you can't, you can't, like, it's not just that we just give people the information and just say, okay, so this is how much, this is how much you should buy, this is how much inventory you're going to need in all these different classifications, this is exactly what you need, uh, this is but the thing is that if you have to also, if the person's not following through on it. I mean, like, we get so, my team and I get so involved in their success and wanting them to
yeah,
succeed, that we have to help dig into, so what is triggering you? Like, what, why is it that you can't follow through on this? Like, let's talk about it. Like, there's got to be something. And so that's why we really end up coaching also, in addition to consulting, because it's really the two different things. And that's the reason why our clients are able to have so much success, is because, listen, they for sure do the work, but that we're working with them to make sure that they're
yeah.
pushing through some of those triggers and pushing through some of that emotional stuff that'll stop you.
I love that. Well, it's like the Super Bowl, right? Like the coach and the players get a ring. So, so everyone's doing different works.
Mhm, mhm.
So I love it. Well, I don't want to take up too much of your time because I know you have your Mondays to do all of the work that you do. But one of the things that we had talked about previously was the idea of HIPAA and LIPA.
Oh, yes, yes.
And so I was hoping we could, I thought it was really valuable. So for our listeners, I was hoping we could dig a little bit into that. And then if they want more from you, which I'm sure they will, we'll send them over to Retail
Yeah,
Mavens.
the
Thanks.
well, and
Thanks. Yeah.
isn't it just so true that, we all wake up in the morning with this big to-do list of all these items, and, I really have literally, like, I feel like I've spent my life trying to and studying productivity and learning to be more productive, because I feel like I screwed up so much, right? I
Oh my
feel
God.
like, so much,
Yeah.
Oh my God. Isn't it so true that we end up always making our mess becomes our message, right? And so
Oh, that's so good. That is so good.
it's incredible how true that is. And so the thing about productivity, one of the most impactful things it was that, and I've approached this from so many different ways, um, but was the impact, was the idea of evaluating your to-do list from a standpoint of, is it a high impact or income producing activity, or a low
Mm,
impact or low income producing activity? And so
so good.
so that's where the HIIPA or HI or LIIPA, HIPAA or LIPA comes from. And that becomes such a clear way of evaluating whether or not you should be doing something. Because
Yeah.
the biggest mistake that everybody, including myself, makes is that we can do things pretty fast. Like, I think of people like certainly like with kids or whatever, like it's easier just to have you make the bed for them. It's easier to just load the dishwasher yourself. It's easier to just
Yeah.
put stuff away yourself because you just know where it goes. But are those activities going to really, and sometimes a low impact activity can become a high impact activity, if there's something going on or whatever. But gosh, 9 times out of 10, there's stuff that everybody does on a daily basis that they shouldn't be doing, that someone else
Yeah.
that they have to have someone else on their team, or they have to add someone to their team to be able to take
So
care of that.
good.
Because the trick is that, we've been talking so much about growth and about change, and change requires that your to-do list changes also.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. That is so good. That is,
Yeah. And I am certainly, I was just realizing it last week about some stuff. And um so what I challenged my clients with last week was to look at the end of the day, was to, when you're, so one of the things we talk about is at the end of the day, kind of reviewing your previous day, like just taking 15 minutes, and don't use your phone because you'll get distracted by a million other things, because that's what's
yeah.
happened to me. I literally have like a little timer over here that attaches to this thing, and I'll set, and I try to always use that. But but so to kind of review the day and to kind of think about, so what did I not have to do today?
That is so good.
Like, what could someone else have done? Because what we all tend to undervalue is the unique high impact and high income things that we have to do. Like, no one else could do this for you. Like this,
Yeah,
the actual interview part of it is what you have to do. But that ultimately what you should be getting to is getting help, is having somebody else help you edit it. Like, you don't have to edit.
absolutely.
That's something you don't
Yeah,
have to ultimately do. And even if the thing is that even if you're not in the situation right now to be able to afford what it is that you think you shouldn't be doing, you've got to be thinking of yourself like that. Like, you've got to be thinking of yourself as that multi-million-dollar business, and where are you going? Because otherwise you'll never get there, right?
that's so good.
You'll never
That's so
get there.
true. I think it's I think you run a danger too of um one, I run a danger of thinking like, oh well, no one can edit the way that I edit. And it's like, really, Jenny, like anyone can cut out the ums and the pauses, and you could teach them like what you want to keep and what you don't want to keep. Um, but then I also think if you don't start training yourself to think of someone else taking over the work, then I know I can be very guilty of thinking I can do it, I can do it, I can add more and still do that. Like my to-do list hasn't changed, it just gets longer. So everything that was on it is still the exact same, which just now just goes on for a couple of
I
pages.
know, right?
And then I'm not getting enough sleep, or I'm not prioritizing the relationships I need to prioritize. But it
Mhm.
is, I think it's really a good idea. I like what you said, like, even if you can't afford it now, like right now, I can't afford an editor, but I could certainly have that as a goal. I could write it down in my start today journal over here that I have an editor. So
Mhm.
um, I like that idea a lot because I think it can get really, it's a slippery slope to think like, oh, I'll just do it. Oh, I can do it. And it's like, you have a high estimation of yourself, yourself and the amount of time that you can fit into one day. So
Right, right. And
everybody.
that's the reason why you have to be able to keep choosing to create that time. You have to keep choosing to hold the time sacred for that which is really the most important things. Like you said, the relationship with your husband and being present for all that. And the only way that can happen is for you to also feel that you're on top of your game, right? That you're on top of what you're doing on a daily basis. And, not necessarily getting it all done, but knowing that it can happen, right? I mean, like knowing that
Yeah.
there's actions you can take. And, I think we all end up in a situation where we feel overwhelmed, and that's what then forces us to change. And wouldn't it be great to be able to kind of help that happen faster by evaluating it a little bit along the way?
Agreed. I read a statistic the other day. It was like even taking 10, I think it's like 10 to 12 minutes a day just to plan your day can save you up to 2 hours a day. And I was like, how is that possible? And I'm like, but I do. I wake up and I'm just like, oh, I should just like go. And it's like, if you just took a few minutes and just like
Right,
planned it out, or
right.
took a few minutes at the end of your day to assess what you did, what you didn't need to do, to think about tomorrow, you would save so much time because instead of just like pinging all over the place, you
Planning
know?
literally creates time. Planning creates time. Planning creates time. It literally does. You can create time with it. Because then if you have a few minutes for something, well, you have your list here, and so you can look at your list and what can I do in just a few minutes? Like it's incredible.
Yeah.
And you have to do it the night before. If you do it that morning, it ends up expanding to fill up way too much
Yeah.
time. And then
Yeah.
you can, and if you're a super creative person, you can get all fancy with colors and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, you don't need any of that. Like that's not anyway. So yeah, that's why it's very true. It makes a big difference. That's why you got to just keep thinking about what is it you need to do in order to make sure that you're doing as many of that high impact and high income producing activities, and how can you set your day up so that you're tripping over success, you know
So good. Gosh, I love it. Oh my goodness, Kathy, you've been amazing. I'm like, this is going to be so good. I don't want to take up longer than the hour that I promised. So we're kind of coming to the end of it. But is there anything you wanted to share that we didn't cover or anything like that? We can always edit it back in. So I don't,
the I just really so hope that I could inspire people to take control of the business side, the number side of their business,
yeah,
because every business has this art, this passion side, and then has this science side, this number side, and they both have to work well for you to really get the success that you deserve. And every single business owner, no matter how big or small the business is, they know that in their heart of hearts. And they
yeah,
also know in their heart of hearts that they're not happy letting the business run them, which
yes,
is what happens, right? I mean, people will often say
yes,
that you're running your business by the seat of your pants, but the reality is that you're not running at all. You're just reacting to everything as opposed to choosing
yes,
response. And for sure, crazy times happen like the pandemic when there are reactions that have to be, but even that can be done intentionally, and you
right.
can choose how you're going to respond, and so. Um, and what I find the biggest holdup is that people think that those numbers become so filled with emotion, and that emotion comes from the fact that they think those numbers are themselves, rather than just viewing those numbers as just black and white pieces of data that you can learn to take action from.
Gosh. That is so good. I needed that. Thank you, Kathy. I was like, the numbers are just sometimes. I just think like, how have I been doing this like this many years and I haven't like gotten further? Like with
Mhm.
the family business. I'm like, how is it possible that we don't have like more money in the bank to like get through this right now?
Mhm.
Or
Mhm.
how is it possible that we owe these people this much money or that our we have an outstanding balance with these customers for so much? Like how were we not more on top of it? And it's hard not to like look at it from an emotional standpoint of like, I'm not enough, I didn't do enough,
Yep.
someone else could do better, as opposed to like looking at those numbers and just seeing them as the data that they are and then using that data to make better decisions moving forward. But because you don't want to deal with it, it's easier just to push it aside. So
Well, and what I'm so proud of how you just verbalized all that is that is for sure what every person feels. Like you just said, what every person feels. And but the thing is that once you once you know that you really want things to change, well, that's exactly why you should reach out, because we offer a free complimentary little analysis where we go through, we can look at some stuff, we see opportunities, and we see that this is the thing, is that what always happens when we look at that data, at the numbers, is that there are things that people are that they are rock stars about that they probably don't even know, but because my team and I have the vision of, like, because we look at this all the time, like we can
Yeah.
say, oh my gosh, did you know that with this you are a rock star about this, like this is
Aw.
amazing, but okay, now but you know what about this over here though, I think this might be one of the issues that we have to change, and let me show you then the impact it can have if we can change it, and then let's talk about some of the steps you can take to change it. And so yeah, we honestly offer that for free, because it's just a great because it's just a great introduction into seeing if is this the kind of, like, do you want to be in a coaching relationship with somebody, or would you
Yeah.
rather just take some of this information and do it on your own, which is fine too, whatever. But what I know is that independent business owners like yourself and like me, we are literally the backbone. We are the backbone of the economy. Like, we're the ones who create all the jobs. We are the backbones of communities, because it's us who, we're the ones who do all the donations to the local
Mhm.
communities, and to we have such an impact where we are. For every dollar that's the impact of how of the amount of money that a local business inputs into their community, as opposed to a big company. And the other thing is that we're also the backbone, literally, of society. This is
Poor
for sure.
peoples.
This is for sure. And so that's the reason why I'm so passionate about helping people not let numbers stop them, like, not let that stop them from achieving more success. And it's also the reason why I'm so passionate about people getting sleep, is that I don't want them to get burnt out, because you are needed. You can't afford to get burnt out. You can't. And so that's the reason why we kind of look at this whole thing, is,
I
as
love that. I love the idea of like you can't afford to get burnt out. Like I tell myself that often. I'm like, you could keep going at this, but like people are counting on you, and like if you're not going to be your healthiest version, you're not going to lead well, and then what's the point? So you think you're doing something beneficial when you're really not. So I'm sorry I disappeared from the screen. My laptop is about to die, and I don't know where my charger is. I'm like, who am I? Oh, I found it. Okay. I was like, this is so unprofessional. I'm so sorry. Oh my God.
No worries, no worries at all, no worries at
So
all.
ridiculous. I was like, okay, Jenny, like maybe you make sure you're fully charged. Like, who does this?
No worries, no worries.
So embarrassing. Okay, we're charged. But I do. I love that because you think like you're just gonna work harder or you can just keep going, but in reality, it's like you just burn yourself out, and the ideas you have at 2 in the morning are often not your your strongest
No, they're
things.
not your strong. I love that. They're not your best ideas usually. That's
You're not your best idea at 2 in the morning. So, and I
not.
love the idea that you're not your data, that it's the data. It doesn't
You are
have to
not
be
your numbers. You are not your numbers. It is just data. There's no emotion to it. Yep, that's exactly it.
so good.
That is exactly it. Yeah. Well, and I think the point is that it allows you to then, when we're talking about HIPAA and LIPA, when we're talking about those kind of activities, the time with your family, is that absolutely is a high impact and really also income producing activity, because when you feel fulfilled with that, it allows you then to go into the next day with more energy. And so I always
So
talk I always talk about how there's no such thing as work-life balance. It's all life, and you do have to make it all work. One of the things that I'm frankly most proud about is my title as the mother of America's most fun family.
I love that. It's so cute. It's so
It's
cute.
so fun, and for sure for sure, what I want you to know is that there's things that I didn't do perfectly when I like to do that. Do you see? I'm like you every with every decision you make, there are consequences to it, and oh, I don't know, this isn't probably even a good place to go down, but it's just that
It is.
I was
I'm like, I'm in it. Let's
well, just I'm
don't stop
totally well, and I'm totally sharing my dirty laundry about how uh about how so I will always choose to go to the game or to be present with people, and I'll always right, I'm a crazy extrovert and I'll always choose relationships. And so meanwhile, I don't clean out my closets like ever. And so for example, like I literally was cleaning out my closet last week, and oh my gosh, like in this closet in my bedroom there were like literally empty shoe boxes. Like what? Like I couldn't fit anything else in this closet, it was so completely full. And there was empty shoe boxes in it. There was all this stuff from 2002, like in my bedroom in a closet, like 6 feet from my head. Thank goodness I had all this stuff at access, right, for any minute. And I was totally beating myself up about it. Like, what kind of person does this?
Mm,
And I surround myself with people to help me see things that I can't always see. And so a therapist is one of them. And she's like, actually, I choose you. I challenge you to see this as to embrace the fact that you are an extrovert, and that in the moment you chose relationships over tasks like that. And so who cares that you didn't clean out that closet? I mean, who cares?
right?
It does not matter. It was a choice that was right for you, that you did, and now you're cleaning it out, and now your kids are big and they can help choose what they want to keep, what they don't keep, like they can help with all of this stuff now. And it was such a great perspective about how nobody does it all right. Never,
No.
you know? And but what good does it do you to beat yourself up?
Nothing. It does no good. But
No.
it's like I'm always like, what are you gaining from this? What internally do you think you're receiving? Like, do you think if you feel guilty about it that actually makes you like a better person? Or like, do you get like an extra star or an extra cookie or something? Like what does this do? It doesn't do any good, and like you said, I think your kids and you have grandkids now, right?
One,
I saw
yeah, there's one granddaughter, yeah.
little girl. Yeah. They're gonna remember the mom who showed up for the games and who was the mother of America's most fun family. They're not gonna remember an empty shoebox. So yeah, they
No,
don't care about that.
no.
So I think I love that you say that it's not work-life balance, it's just all life and you have to figure out how to make it work. And
Mhm.
I feel like your empty shoeboxes are you just figuring out how to make it work. So
Well, and you know what I didn't appreciate until right now is also that whole thing about HIPAA and LIPA, and how, at different moments in your life, different things are HIPAA and LIPA. So, like right now, it is a HIPAA activity for me to clean out that closet. But like, right, 20 years ago and whatever, it wasn't at the time, but at least I'm doing it now. And for sure, something that we all do is the LIPA activity of beating ourselves up. And there is, you talk about low impact. I mean, like that's negative impact.
yeah. Oh gosh, that's good. Like that'll preach. That'll be like really good.
It's my question when I get to heaven to ask God is like, why is it that you made us see all the negative stuff so clearly and we don't see the positive stuff so well? Like that
Right?
just is
That
so
is a really good question. That is like, I am very good at seeing the negative.
yeah. I
So
mean, everybody is, and I think that that's the beauty of I think that's the beauty, Jenny, of what you do is that you bring your realness into all of this, and you're willing to share what it is that you struggle with, and and everybody does. Everybody does, and so people love to hear. One of the things I talk about all the time is that listen, I have made hundreds of thousands of dollars of mistakes so that
yeah.
you don't have to.
Oh, that's so good. That's
I mean, you'll probably make different ones. I'm not telling you that. You know what I'm saying? But
you don't have to make these ones. You don't have to make these ones.
right, exactly, exactly. Because there's such power in people knowing that they're not alone, that they're not alone in what they're struggling with. That there are other people that are struggling too, and this is the beauty of how we can all help each other to be better and to be healthier.
So true. Gosh, Kathy, I love you so much.
Oh, right back at you.
I just so appreciate you. I'm so glad you decided to do this. I think it's going to be really helpful for everyone listening. I know it's what I needed this morning, so
Oh, I'm so
I'm
glad.
thanks. I like um For anyone who is looking to connect with you afterwards, where can they find you? Can they find out more about your services?
Yeah, so for sure you should just shoot me an email at Cathy@retailmavens.com, and just and tell me that you heard me here, and we'll get you set up. We'll get you a link to my calendar, and the team and I will take a look at and chat with you if you're interested. And you can also, at the website, we have all the other products and stuff that we offer. But really, I encourage you to, if you really want to change something, I can't, it speeds up the process so much if you just book a time to chat, because there's no pressure, there's no charge for it, and let's just see if we can point you in the right direction so you can get the success you're looking for.
So good. Hey guys, thanks for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed it, which I hope you did, make sure you subscribe so that you never miss what's next. If you really enjoyed it, I'd be super grateful if you could leave a review on iTunes or anywhere that you listen. And if you really enjoyed it, then I'd love if you'd share it with a friend. Last but not least, make sure you're following us on Instagram at The Vendor's Daughter for a behind-the-scenes look at my personal and professional life, and for what I hope is a little bit of daily inspiration as we walk this crazy journey together.